Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the people at Jamf, learn about what we're up to when it comes to managing and securing Apple devices, along with what's happening in the IT landscape. I'm your co-host, Kat Garbus, joined by co-host Josh Thornton.
Good morning, good afternoon, Kat. How you doing?
I'm good. I am in my comfy Zelda sweater. I was going to wear Jamf swag today, but then I was like, it's December now and it's the holiday season. So we've got an Ocarina of Time ugly, I'm saying that with air quotes, sweater because it's adorable.
Yeah, if there's ever a plug for listening/watching Jamf After Dark on YouTube that we now have available, it is your sweater.
It's
That
the
is
sweater.
pretty awesome. So
I
you're
love
feeling
this
the
game.
holiday?
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. I want to fast forward to Christmas break. Actually play this game on the original N64 every year during Christmas break. So my annual run through the game, it's going to happen.
Kudos. Do
How
you
was
do all
your?
the side quests?
Not when I do the run through. No, I'll do most of the side quests or the very important ones, but I haven't beat one of my friends' records, but I get close. I finished the game straight through in a little over 8 hours, even with the water temple.
Yeah, the water temple was always a bear. Once
Yeah.
you learn it, if you can remember it, you're good. But until then, it's tough.
Speaking of things that are tough, coding. I don't know how to do it. When I was proposed with today's topic, I had no idea and I had to use Google. And I consider myself not like super technical, but like, technical enough. And I was like, I don't know what Terraform is. So, Josh, who's with us today to help? And for those of you not as technical as our guest today, I'll ask all the questions that you might be thinking because I had no idea what was going on until I Googled everything. So, Josh, who's with us?
First, kudos on that segue. That was really top notch. And like you mentioned, today we're going to be talking about infrastructure as code and capabilities we have like Terraform that are really cool and kind of nerdy. And I've been looking forward to talking about this for months now. And so we have the wonderful Ryan Legg joining us here from Jamf. Ryan, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, it's great to be here. Long-time listener, first-time guest. Awesome. I'm happy to be around for this. Love the sweater, Kat. That's fantastic. I still have my old emulators sitting around somewhere, so I got to go maybe pull those out now. I think you've inspired me. But yeah, my name's Ryan. As Josh said, I am a systems engineer, solutions engineer here at Jamf. Talking to a lot of our customers around planning future projects and trying to get into the nitty gritty of some of the technical aspects of them and also to help them hopefully start to adopt this infrastructure as code way of thinking that seems to be coming up more and more. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm here today to do, and I'm sure there will be a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversation to come.
Before we talk about Terraform, I have a very important question that's somewhat work related. Is that a pillow from JNUC that we had at the expo booth on your couch behind you?
Yep, sure is.
Okay.
I asked permission, and then I took it home. It's perfect. It joins my Throwboy pillows. For anybody who's not seen the visual of this, the Throwboy pillows, the Finder pillow, and the Apple II pillow are behind me, and then there's a Jamf pillow to join it. So it felt like it was great company to have.
I saw that in the back and was like, hey, wait a minute. I think I napped on that pillow on the expo hall when I was sitting and taking a little break. So it's nice to see that it traveled somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start with the question. So before we talk about Terraform, because one of my questions is, what is it? But before we get there, can you share an overview of what infrastructure as code is all about, or IAC for short? Josh approached us as like, Josh, I don't know what you're talking about. So for listeners like me, what does all this translate to?
Yeah, no, and it's a great question. I feel like it's a thing that is coming up more and more, and these conversations are happening all the time now. We did a couple sessions at JNUC about it, and I think people are just asking the question more and more. It's a good one. I've had a lot of conversations with people from the very beginning of this all the way to super advanced. So I'll try to break it down so that everybody has a good understanding, and I think hopefully you'll get a lot out of it too if you are a longtime Terraform user. But effectively, the idea here is that it's kind of the next level or next generation version of managing your software environments. So you can think about a lot of targets like AWS, even Okta. Basically, if there's an API involved, you can make a Terraform provider. And what's great about a Terraform provider is it's kind of a plugin. It sits in between the API and what the end user is actually doing or what the admin is doing. So it can kind of understand the API for them, which is an incredible superpower because you don't have to go and update all your scripts. It's a huge, huge deal. So think of it kind of like treating your configuration inside of an environment or a SaaS tenant, kind of like a software project. So if you're kind of unfamiliar with that, the idea of pipelines and all of that, the idea here is that you can have multiple developers that basically make their code changes, submit a change or submit what's called a pull request in GitHub. And then you can validate that functionality, run a couple tests, make sure that there's nothing that's just outwardly incorrect or wrong about that code. And then you can bring it right in. What's great about this is it gives you full version control. It gives you auditing. It gives you the capability to revert an error quickly. And ultimately, it provides accountability. And that's a huge deal. And I think just as an aside, I think we've all had moments inside of tenants, SaaS apps, whatever it is, where someone who maybe had admin rights, maybe they shouldn't have, or they just made a mistake. Things happen, and sometimes those are very easy to fix. They're very quick. You can just kind of move in, make a couple changes, and you're back and running. But some of them take time. They involve cycles of people trying to work to figure out what got clicked, what moved around, what file got removed, what checkbox got unchecked. And that's a lot of cycles. That's a lot of downtime that, in this world, in this IAC world, you could just roll back to that last working version, apply those changes back to the environment, and you're back to square one. You're good to go. And then you can fix whatever the error was in the code and then get it up to date later. So that's the idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's some advantages too when you talk about using a tool like Git for version control. And, you mentioned some of them being able to quickly roll back a change that's made, being able to, when you're making or committing a change, talk about what you're changing and why you're changing it. So you have that type of documentation, or just to be able to understand why did someone make a change. I think you also look at for those who might have both a production instance of their software and sandbox or test instances, being able to create much better consistency between those environments without having to think about, oh, well, someone did make that change in production really quick because we needed to fix something fast. Now I need to go remember to make that same change in our sandbox.
Exactly. And that's a great point. And the idea with this is that you can develop these pipelines. So again, if you're familiar with software development, you're familiar with the idea of having like a development or a staging branch, and then your main branch that's your actual project, your actual code. To put it even simpler, even if you're just managing a development environment or a sandbox environment of Jamf Pro, and then your production environment, there's going to be drift between those two because you don't have them directly in sync. So this gives you the ability, just like what Josh was saying, this gives you the ability to make the change in a staging, development, sandbox environment, and then you can just commit that change to what controls your production environment, and then they're exactly the same. You never have drift. You just have projects being worked on in one, and then eventually they get promoted to that production level. It's a really smart way of approaching development around these applications and around these environments.
So if we were to define like what is Terraform, like simply like explain it like I'm 5 and this is my first day of Terraform school, how would you explain it to me in the simplest of terms?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say this, that Terraform is one of many approaches that are out there that do these things, right? So there's things like Ansible, and there are other tools that can do this kind of infrastructure as code world. To be honest, with Terraform, we kind of fell backwards into Terraform. Near the beginning of 2024, we started working with the guys from Deployment Theory. They're out of Lloyd's of London. Really great guys, Daffod Watkins, Joseph Little, and Bobby. Great guys. They're awesome to work with. But we kind of fell backwards into it. Since then, we've learned how great this actually is. So the idea here, and I kind of said this a minute ago, but just to kind of flesh this out a little bit more. Imagine you have an API and you want to write a script against that. So you go, you write your script, you've got your endpoint, you've got your syntax, you've got the things you want to do, and you've got all your variables and everything's all ready to go. You write your script. Maybe you commit it to a GitHub repo. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just saved somewhere locally, or it's saved in an environment somewhere. Let's say that API endpoint changes somewhere down the line. Now you've got to go find all of the scripts that reference that API endpoint, and you've got to make the change. You've got to go and refactor all of those scripts to get them in line with whatever that change, whatever that update is. What Terraform does is it abstracts that for you. So if you want to think about it this way, if I have an API, I can have, the API endpoints change constantly, just always getting iterated on and getting moved to like something like the platform API that we announced at JNUC. I can have all those things happening, but locally in my code and what I've written down in my configuration, I can have that just stay exactly the same. And the Terraform provider gets updated to talk to the proper endpoint to do the right thing. So it's effectively, instead of you having to rewrite because you're trying to target a new language that someone speaks, right? So you're trying to rewrite a book to localize it into a new language. Instead of you having to do that work, someone is doing the translation for you. They're actually sitting in between, making that change and making it make sense so that you can sell that book in a whole new location, right? That's kind of the idea here, is we can have constant iteration on the API. And the Terraform provider can understand what to do with that. And the admin, the person actually writing the Terraform code, doesn't really have to account for that part of it. They can just keep doing what they're doing and make changes as they need to rather than when they're required to.
That's helpful. I did the Googling again just to make sure I can keep up with the two of you. So the AI overview, it puts it out there, and it did cover a lot of what you had mentioned, Ryan, in infrastructure as a code, enabling users to define, provision, modify, and destroy cloud and on-premise infrastructure. So that was unique, where if someone needed to make maybe a big change, the destruction part of it, I don't know, I heard destroy and I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. But through the declarative configuration language. So that's, I think, really exciting. Um, how is it integrating with Jamf?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at Jamf, when we started working on this project, we wanted to use it for a couple reasons, and it actually has ended up giving us some pretty great results. So the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to provide a faster way to get new customers to Jamf. Maybe they've never used Jamf before in their entire time in the past, or maybe they just want to quickly onboard a new sandbox instance, or whatever they might be trying to accomplish. We wanted to give them a really clear, distinct way to build out a bunch of those kind of recommended configurations quickly so that they can get up and running. The reality is, with a lot of SaaS apps, and this is kind of true across the board, you buy the app, you start to do the couple things you want to do in it, but sometimes you never realize the full benefit of the entirety of the product. Maybe you don't understand what extension attributes are and how cool they are and how powerful they are. Maybe you don't understand smart groups to the level that you should, right? So we wanted to give people a way to have a lot of those things built and ready to go out of the gate, so they could understand, okay, this is how these things work. This is how they're interconnected. We kind of understand it a little bit more. That was part one. And we did that. We built something called Onboarder. It's actually part of the onboarding package that gets sent out to new Jamf customers now, where they can go in and they can run these suggested modules. In the background, that's all happening through Terraform, But to the end user, it's a web front end. It's a GUI. They're clicking through. They're checking the boxes. They're putting in their credentials. They're clicking proceed, and they're letting it do its thing. But in the background, that's all Terraform code we wrote. So it takes in the variables. It does what it needs to do. It builds out what it needs, and then you have a fully built out instance with a ton of great configuration right out of the get go. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted to provide reference modules so that people coming down the line that are having the conversations like what we're having on this very podcast, they're, maybe longtime Jamf admins. Maybe they're not even that long. They just have some stuff built, and they want to move to a more declarative, more code-based way of doing things. This is a great way to have a bunch of reference modules they can understand, that are simple, that are pretty much as vanilla as it gets. They're not super opinionated, and that's very much on purpose, so that they can go in, any admin can go in and start working with it. We even went so far as to make a template branch of that particular GitHub repo to get you up and running so that you can start working with Terraform against a Jamf instance in minutes. We're talking the amount of time it takes you to download a code editor, clone a repo, and fill out some variables, and you're ready to go. So we really wanted this to kind of serve two end goals: is helping those new customers, and then helping longtime customers that want to transition to this new way of managing their Jamf instances.
I know you've mentioned a few times now this idea of a declarative or code-based way to write the configurations. And I think for a lot of admins, they might have experience writing their own scripts. And like we talked about earlier, you're calling APIs, maybe it's in a bash script or shell script, or Python or what have you. What does it look like in this declarative way? How is the configuration being written?
Yeah, it's actually really great because it is very human readable. And I think that that's something that is really important to drive home here. It's very simplistic. Effectively, what you do is you go in and you write what's known as a resource block. And that resource block just basically says, this is a smart group that I'm making. I'm going to give it this name. And then you just list out all the specifics about that smart group. So it's everything from what criteria goes into it, what you want to name it, what the modifiers are for those that are super familiar with building smart groups. You know how important that is. Do I need a parenthesis around a specific control? So you build all that out, and you can think about this. You can extrapolate it out to all the different things you can do in Jamf. So extension attributes, app installers. I mean, you name it, you can do it. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to make all the things that I would typically do by clicking around in the GUI, and this is commonly referred to as click ops. I can do that. I can click around, I can make all my changes, I can save it. But this is basically writing it all out line by line, so that if I have a change I want to make, I just go and make a change to that line in the code, or I add a new block, or I add a new variable, and then I automatically have that thing. Kat mentioned that you can destroy, right? So what Terraform does is when you run it, it looks at your instance versus what it's already done in the past, and that's saved in what's called a state file. That's super important. It looks at what it's done in the past with Terraform against your instances, and it looks like what exists today, right? And then it says, okay, these things have changed. So if I've gone in and made changes to that smart group, I can now go in and reapply it with Terraform. Terraform will look at the smart group as it exists today. It'll see that I added a whole new criteria. I added a different modifier. I added whatever I added. It'll make that change for me live in the moment. And then it will destroy anything that I have removed from the code automatically, add anything that I've added, and change anything that I need to have changed. It's all automatic, and it all understands its own state. It's very, very powerful in that way.
I'm going to go off script. Apologies to everyone. But is there a real example you can give without identifying information? Like when you say make a change, like what change has been made? Is there, someone we helped that, we're probably under all the NDA, so don't give anything away. But like, is there something that we can just kind of like wrap our heads around to help us kind of mentally walk through some of these with a little more detail?
Certainly. So let's say that, let's put it this way. So let's say I am transitioning away, or I'm maybe moving more towards platform SSO as an
Okay,
option for my future growth.
great example. That's something that's coming up all the time right now.
Exactly. It's constantly in conversations that I'm having. So let's say I'm moving more towards that, and I want to move maybe away from some of the features of Jamf Connect that I've used in the past because I'm replacing those with PSSO. Makes perfect sense. That's kind of the way forward for a lot of this functionality. So what I can do is, let's say my configuration as it exists today sets up my Jamf Connect automatically for me. So I've got my configuration profiles, I've got my license, I've got my package for the app, I've got everything ready to go. It's all in my code. So now I go in and I basically just go into that code file and I remove the things that I'm replacing with PSSO. So I take those things out. Maybe I just comment them out so I don't have to delete them because, I always worry about deleting something I maybe shouldn't have. So maybe I comment them out, but either way, I remove those things. I tell Terraform, I no longer want to do these things. I actually want you to remove it from my Jamf Pro instance. Now, in the past, that was I have to log in as an admin, find the things I want to remove, go in, manually remove them, unscope things, add exceptions, and all that. Well, in this new world, I can go into that same code block and I can go into that scoping section for the configuration profiles, and I can add an exclusion with a brand new smart group I just created that basically says if platform SSO is on here, remove Jamf Connect. And then now I can go and make a whole new module that builds my configuration profiles for PSSO, sets up my app config for the, let's say, Okta Verify in this case, sets up my app config for Okta Verify, drops in the latest version of Okta Verify as a package to deploy with a policy, do all of that. Now I'm ready to go. I've got my configuration built so that I'm going to take out the Jamf Connect parts I don't need. I'm going to add the PSSO parts that I do need, and I run that maybe against a developer instance, make sure I haven't made any mistakes, and then I roll that to production. That all happens automatically on the back end. So it removes the things it needs to remove, changes the things that need to be changed, adds the things that I added. And now all of the computers in my environment automatically get those changes deployed to them in minutes just by doing this all through infrastructure as code. And now I have the ability to go back and audit. So let's say something I did breaks my production instance or does something weird in my production instance. Any of my coworkers, any of the other people that are looking at that code can go back, including myself, can go back, revert that change, go back to the way it was before, let everything roll back out, and then fix whatever it was, resubmit their pull request, re-verify, and then let that push out. And obviously, if you're doing the testing, if you're going through your developer instance, if you're going through a sandbox instance, that will hopefully stop you from ever having to do that. But it's nice to know that if you did need to do that, if you did need to go that route, you do have the option.
Thank you for explaining that. And with using a really good example, I feel far smarter than I did 2 minutes ago. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think the other benefit, you mentioned having coworkers take a look at what you've done. When you're working with Git and version control, you can set it up so there have to be specific approvals required. So that way I don't go into my company's instance and think I'm doing the right things and I'm clicking buttons and all of a sudden my C-level computers stop functioning correctly because I can have an approver through Git and using Terraform with Jamf, where if I submit a proposed change, now Ryan gets to look over and say, oh, hey, Josh, you made a mistake here. We want to fix that before we push this out to everybody. So it adds an additional accountability, which I think is really great.
Yeah, and what you just referred to there is a GitOps workflow, right? There's kind of two big terms that are happening right now around this, and that's GitOps and DevOps, right? So what you just described is I want to get away from ClickOps. I want to move to GitOps. And you can attach so many things to that GitOps workflow in the way that you're doing everything. Like we've been talking about, double checking, making sure that everything is doing what it's supposed to do, and then having certain approvers, make sure that we're all good, audit the code, make sure I didn't make any crazy changes, and then go ahead and pull that into the production instance. Great. But you can add so much more to it. For anybody who hasn't messed around with GitHub, you can do things like apply everything to a test instance automatically. You can do things like run the Terraform format command to make sure everything is formatted properly. Make sure that everything is up to date. Make sure that all of the providers you're looking at, the version of Terraform you're looking at, are all up to date and ready to go. You can do that all in just minutes by having GitHub workflows that are kicked off automatically to do these checks. So you can have more than just somebody going in and reviewing the code. You can have things actually apply in real life scenarios so that you can see what the results of those things are, and you can get real in the moment feedback on any failures, errors, or anything along those lines. So you can go back, fix the code or fix a variable or reset a password or whatever it might look like, reapply everything, and you get to see the results of those changes as they go.
Now, what does this look like for folks who are using other tools outside of Jamf? We know that we exist within a broader tech stack. Are there integrations or ways for this infrastructure as code with Jamf using Terraform to also work alongside other vendors?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the great thing about this approach, especially with Terraform, is that if there's an API for it, you can build a Terraform provider for it. And so you think about this, you start to kind of expand the scope a little bit. What if I wanted to have a module created that goes into Okta, and Okta does have a provider, by the way, in Terraform. Maybe goes into Okta, makes the applications that I need for Platform SSO in this example, passes back the client ID for me automatically as a variable, passes that into the configuration profile that I'm going to put in Jamf Pro, and I just do that all in line in one code, in one group of code blocks in one code file. That's a pretty incredible superpower. So yes, you can do that. You can do, for example, we have a really great workflow in our Jamf Concepts world around SaaS tenancy control using AWS. So it's not unpacking your packets. It's not being creepy about it. It's doing some header stuff and some certificate checking. Really cool workflow. But maybe I want to build all that in AWS with APIs with Terraform because I don't want to touch the AWS console. There's a lot going on there. It's very complex. So I let Terraform do it, pass the things that I need for the Jamf side, and then on the Jamf side, I go ahead and make those changes in Security Cloud, in our management platform, kind of go and make those changes, and then everything rolls out as I would expect it to my environment.
Are there other infrastructure as code or IACs out there that, folks might have heard of? And I guess the second part would be, how did we end up with Terraform to focus on if there are other options?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a few. I think probably the biggest one that people would know is Ansible. Not too dissimilar from Terraform. I'll just be honest, mostly we ended up with Terraform just because of the folks that we started working with on the project. There was already momentum there. So, I mentioned it a little bit ago, but just to reiterate, the guys at Deployment Theory from Lloyd's Banking of London, they're great people. They helped really spearhead this. So we have a community backed Terraform provider for Jamf Pro. Does quite a bit. It covers a good bit of what you're trying to do with Jamf Pro. There's very few things that you can't do, like you can't go and get a push notification certificate from Apple and bring it in, but that's besides the point. There's certain things you can do and can't do, of course. But what's great about that is because of that work, we've seen the benefit of it. So, we recently announced our platform API in JNUC in Denver just not too long ago. And we already have a platform provider for that platform API, which is great. So we've been working on that internally. And as things get added to it, as new functionality shows up there, we're getting that into the provider automatically. What's great about this is that Terraform has this really great thing called a registry. And in that registry, if you look up Jamf-concepts, you'll find our splash page in there that has all the things we're working on. So we have our provider for our security products. We have our platform provider. We have one for our auto update features, which is part of our MSP side of the house. And we have all those modules I mentioned earlier that back our onboarder project. So it's all in there. And as things get added, as new functionality, new features, you name it, it's going to be there. So you can actually reference that easily to just kind of see where things are going. But for now, you can have multiple providers in one singular Terraform project. So I can have my Okta, AWS, Jamf Pro, Jamf Security Cloud, and I can have my platform API provider in there as well. So going forward, we'll have a little bit of overlap, and then eventually, hopefully the idea is that a lot of things will move to that platform API, and you'll be able to simplify what that looks like for yourself on the Terraform side and the API side, depending on how you're approaching it.
And I think, you mentioned there's a number of providers, and especially if you're doing integrations with other vendors, then you're going to be considering the Terraform providers for those vendors. I guess let's pretend I'm an admin trying to get started and maybe I'm feeling a little overwhelmed because there are so many options out there. What would you recommend in terms of getting started? What should I be looking at? What should I actually be doing to truly get from not using Terraform at all to actually getting some changes to my environment with Terraform?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are two paths to this, right? There's the typical path, which is using things like Udemy and those online tutorial situations where they're helping you figure out the language and how it works and how you can apply it to your different functions that you want to try to configure, right? That you want to write code to manage those things. A lot of those are very focused on AWS. Terraform really started as an AWS configuration tool. They're very useful courses. They really are. They help you really get an understanding of how Terraform works. But what I'll say too is that for our crowd here, obviously it's a Jamf focused crowd. We have a couple different things happening out in the environment. So one, if you're in the Mac admin Slack, there is a Terraform channel in there where we're discussing changes to the provider. We're discussing issues that people run into and how to resolve them. We're discussing known things that we're aware of, and people are sharing cool things that they're learning along the way that maybe other people didn't know. It's a really great resource to have. But in addition to that, there are multiple people writing tutorials that are out there that are focused on Jamf. And we've even also published a 2-part blog series that I wrote that is basically just built as a get up and running with Terraform and Jamf. The idea being, here's what it is, and then that's part one, and then part two shows you how to just kind of get an environment ready, start working, start doing what you need to do, and basically apply a couple. It's really simple categories is all it applies. It runs one module, and the idea is just to show you how everything works. Once you're at a place where you have everything ready, you have your environment, and you're ready to start writing your code, you can very easily just start building your own modules, modifying what's already there, and you can start to familiarize yourself with how everything works. I think that all of those tools are a really great resource that is really coming up now, especially focused on the Jamf side.
I'd be curious to know who's this for? You mentioned MSPs earlier, so I know they're on the partner side. Is this partners, customers, both? Anyone with a Jamf instance? Be curious on that answer.
I would definitely say it's both. It's kind of everybody, right? I guess I'll retract my answer just now, and I'll just say yes. It's for everybody. It's really, honestly, it's intended to help anyone out there that's managing Jamf, or that's really managing anything that you can use Terraform to manage, right? So this could work for those really large companies that a lot of them are trying to push for no hands in the cookie jar, right? They don't want people in their SaaS apps. They don't want people logging in because they know if I go into AWS, for example, and I remove a VPN connection, I just took down everyone's access to the AWS portal or my AWS instance, and now they don't have access to all of their EC2. So it's a problem, right? So a lot of people are trying to get people out of the admin consoles, and for good reason. Like I said, there's just so many potential issues there. So as those larger organizations start to look at, writing configuration as code and making sure everything is codified, verifiable, testable, scalable, auditable, and you have a running total of what everyone is doing, I think a lot of those companies are really starting to see the value there, and they're starting to push for this migration. But at the same time, you want to think about the MSP world. You want to think about, you're out there, you're a managed service provider, you're trying to do your job and you're managing multiple instances. Imagine a world where you could just use Terraform to build the new function without having to go in and click around. You've got it. It's already done. You've got your sample configuration. You've got your, the thing that you've tested with your coworkers, with your company numerous times. Instead of having to rebuild it or rewrite the configuration every single time, I have one Terraform module I put in, I fill in the variables that are specific to that customer, and I run it. Simple. So it makes life a lot easier on that end. And then you think about the small customers, like SMB, mid-market, whatever it is, right? Maybe they're in a place where they want to grow. Everyone wants to grow, right? Every company is looking to grow. They all want that. So what if you could get started really early in a small company with not a lot of things being managed, not a lot of things, under that purview, and you can start to codify it early and comment it and document it so that when people come in, inevitably as the growth happens, people come into your team or people come in down the line to replace you, maybe you move up, you do something new. They have all the tools at their disposal to continue where you left off, or to build what you built, or to build on from what you built.
You got me sold. I'm ready to go.
Good.
Anything else that you think is really important we haven't talked about? I know we've covered a wide gamut from intro to digging in a little bit more. Anything top of mind that you want to make sure everyone listening walks away with?
I think the biggest thing to know is that this is just becoming a bigger topic every day. We've been working on this pretty heavily for the better part of the last 2 years. So we've been pretty deep in it. And when you're really deep in a project, it's hard to see, outside of that. Like, what's going on out here? What's the buzz look like around the environment? And ever since JNUC, and really just even a little bit before it, we've started to see such an uptick in people being interested in this, and people that maybe didn't even realize Jamf could do this. Just reaching out and asking, hey, can we talk about how this works? Can we talk about what does it look like to manage these products with code? What does this whole thing mean? Like, how do I build it out? Can I see some examples? And we're happy to oblige. So we've had a lot of those conversations, and I think that that's really important to know. But also, it's a discussion now that I'm having across the board. So, like, to Kat's point from earlier, is this for MSPs? Is it for small customers? Is it for big customers? The conversations I'm having about this run the gamut. Everybody's interested in it. And I think that what we're going to start to see is a lot more people, a lot more organizations adopting this and making it part of their workflow. So my thing that I keep telling people that maybe aren't ready to adopt this just yet, maybe Terraform's not approved for their environment yet, maybe they're highly regulated, maybe they have to go through a series of approval to get to a point where they could even think about doing this. I would just say, see if you can start now to understand the concepts and understand how it works, at least at a base level, so that when that inevitable question comes through and somebody says, I want every admin out of the tool and I want you to do it all through code, when that inevitably happens down the road, you're already 10 feet into that conversation, and you don't have to spend the time backtracking to try to understand how it all works. That would be my biggest thing that I think everyone should know about this, is that it does seem to be the future. The earlier you can get started on it, the better.
So how can folks get started? Like, if they're ready, like, all right, Josh, Kat, Ryan, we heard it. We're ready to give this a go. How do folks get started? What are some resources? You had alluded to some JNUC discussions. Lay it on us. Let us know.
Yeah, of course. So the first thing I think is a really good resource to have, right on developer.jamf.com. We have actually documented what we've done with this whole Terraform tool and how we've built out the different providers. We've got links to everything, a little bit of a write-up in there. That is directly linked from Jamf Concepts. So if you go to concepts.jamf.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see infrastructure as code there. You can go right into that. You'll see links to everything that we've got going on, the registries, all of it, including my initial write-up on how to kind of get up and running and a brief explanation of what this all is. If this podcast didn't explain it well enough, that will. So we'll get as much as we can as far as information into your hands, and then you can get up and running with that simple project that I mentioned earlier, and kind of just kick off and just kind of get running with all of that and start building and start digging in. That would be the biggest thing. And also keep your eye on that site. So especially trusted.jamf.com. I know I'm throwing some URLs at you, but concepts.jamf.com, trusted.jamf.com. Trusted.jamf.com not only has an initial write-up on infrastructure as code, it will have future write-ups and tutorials that we're working on behind the scenes. It also has great write-ups about all of our security products, network relay, platform SSO, all of that, and how to get up and running with all of that in a simple way, documented all in one spot so you can easily see it. For anybody who attended JNUC and had any interest in PSSO or infrastructure as code, my colleague Adam and I were sending people here left and right. So please make sure to keep your eye on those pages on trusted.jamf.com, and you'll see things get added over time, and hopefully even more conversation around this at JNUC next year and on into the future. So that's our plan for now, but those would be the places I would go to get started.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this topic for months. And so to get you here and sharing a little bit more about why everybody should feel excited about jumping in and how to do that right now feels really good. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it. As I end pretty much every call I've had around this, I could probably talk about infrastructure as code for like a whole week straight and not get tired of it. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just happy to come on here and talk about it with you guys. It really is an honor and a pleasure to be here. So, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here. And with that, Josh, another podcast in the books. Ryan, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And just a reminder, if you're interested in jumping in to Terraform, Ryan mentioned a few different places you can go, concepts.jamf.com. You can go to trusted.jamf.com. And then we also hop right on into Mac Admin Slack as well. And we're happy to chat there. And as always, Jamf After Dark is a podcast from Jamf, and it's copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Technical details and product offerings may change at any time, so always check jamf.com for the latest information on our products and services.
You can reach out to us if you have questions or comments or even suggested show topics or fan mail. Simply send a friendly email to info@jamf.com with the subject line, attention to the podcast. We are also a sponsor of the Mac Admins Foundation, and many of us are available on the Mac Admin Slack channel. And of course, if you need support, visit Jamf account to start a conversation or open a ticket to get your technical questions answered.
Special thanks to our guest this week, Ryan, and also, as always, to our audio engineers, now video engineers, Merlin and Martin, who help us sound and look great. Until next time, for Kat Garbus, I'm Josh Thornton.
And for Josh Thornton, I'm Kat Garbus. We will catch you at Jamf After Dark again soon. Good night, good morning. Thank you for listening.